discussing things in a correct manner, factual speak, so to speak. So Bill, welcome. Thank you for being here. Listen up, and thank you for that. And I'll just open the floor to you all. We've had multiple discussions on this, and this again is in response to your request to just have a talk among yourselves. And there's potential things that we could respond to.
So where does this stand?
Tell us how we...
Well, I mean, like there's been, what, 2 or 3 delays of the financial close. I mean, in my business of building and selling houses, if somebody delayed the close date 2 or 3 times, I'd start thinking, like, well, maybe this isn't happening. Maybe you don't actually have the money to do this. Is that a fair assessment? Or?
Well, the contract was executed on June 26th of last year. And there have been, both parties have had things that they've been required to do in the process of fulfilling the terms of that contract. And the final thing is scheduled for May 27th, when I-77 Mobility Partners is supposed to complete the financial arrangements with NCDOT. They were approved for the TIFIA loan. There were some modifications of the state's participation. And of course, this is hearsay because I'm not part of the state, but supposedly, the bonds have been sold or being sold right now, and they anticipate that the final event required in the contract will occur on May 27th.
It has been delayed several times, though, right? When we keep
Yes,
hearing it gets pushed back further and further, which makes us wonder, is it real?
Yeah, and of course, I think that's a genuine concern to have. And the communications that we've had with the NCDOT are about being able to satisfy the application requirements for TIFIA, because this was a new process for NCDOT. They had never gone through the TIFIA process before, so there was some back and forth with the TIFIA office. And then the TIFIA office requested additional equity input and additional participation by the state before they would approve the TIFIA application. So they had to make those arrangements, which caused probably both of the delays that occurred. And then and they got approved. And so they're in the process of selling the bonds to be able to satisfy the requirements of the contract.
So the big news, as I understand it right now, is this inserting of the clause about not widening, being able to add general purpose lanes from exit 28 to 36. Great deal of conversation around that. Can you speak to that point about how it entered the contract, Lynn? Why it was not there? Why was it excluded?
Well, the unplanned revenue impacting event clause was in the RFP from the very beginning of consideration of the public-private partnership contract. As and again, this is hearsay evidence for Mr. Bullock. As the process went along, as they got to that clause, there was some pushback from the bidders with regards to that specific project because it added general purpose lanes, and in their mind, that would have created a constructive unplanned revenue impacting event, and it would affect their ability to generate the kind of revenue that they needed for the financial model. Therefore, they said, if that's the case, then we're going to have to bid more at the very beginning of the project to be able to accommodate that if you want to keep that in there. So my understanding from the state is that it was taken out because the estimate was it was going to cost $40 to $60 million up front for a project that in reality might never get built. It might never get built the way that it was actually proposed to be built. The original project, as it was conceived of when it was put in the TIP, way back when, was going to use the same real estate that the express lanes are going to go on the causeways. So therefore, they can't use that same real estate twice. So the price of the project would go up into the range of $410 million on the bottom end, and depending on what would occur with the Environmental Protection Agency and FERC and all of these other folks that you would have to negotiate with, assuming that they would even allow you to do it, they would have to either expand the causeways or build a bridge. If it's build a bridge, it's like I-85, and then you're up to $1 billion. And so on the front end, the other question is asked is, do we want to spend 50 or 60 or $40 million to get to that point and then say, no, we can't really do this project? And so that was the rationale that was given to us by NCDOT. Now, occasionally, I have to tell you, they did not point out that that change had been made when it was made in January of 2014. They didn't consult the CRTPF, nor did they consult any of the local jurisdictions with regards to the fact that that had arisen as an issue and that they felt it needed to be dealt with. So it was never taken to the TCC or to the MPO.
Who is they? I know it's NCDOT, but who are they? Is it a committee? Is it elected officials?
It's a committee of folks that were working on that particular public-private partnership. So it involved the finance people, all of the disciplines within NCDOT. I personally don't know who those people were, but it's probably on their website. So.
Well, is there a point?
And I guess I'm really a little bit puzzled between whether there are so many things flying around that it's hard for them to keep track of it, or whether this is the kind of thing that whoever they might be would just as soon stay quietly buried on page 426 of a very lengthy policy. But at some point, somebody had to know that, well, this is in here, it's controversial, and gosh, we haven't told the committees, we haven't told the towns. It really doesn't seem like there's a commitment to transparency, or alternatively, there's a level of disorganization that is troubling.
And I understand that reaction, and the TCC did not find out about that until July 22nd, after the contract had been signed. However, we can't go back in time, but I don't know why there was no consultation made, because we could just as easily, the TCC may have supported whatever the decision was. They never had the opportunity to ask questions or to say we support it or don't support it. So I understand fully what you're saying.
Is there a point person for this project at NCDOT? Is that the secretary? Is it someone beneath the secretary? I mean, it seems like a project this big would have a person who is a project manager.
There is an office of P3s. I can't remember exactly what the name of it, and one of the things that did occur at that time, and I'm not trying to give them an excuse, is that they did have a change in management in that office. Victor Barber was replaced by Roger Rochelle, who's now the head of that office, and the chief financial officer was replaced at that same time. So there was a little change in management going on at that same time, but there is an office of P3. It used to be called the Design Build team. Design Build is a type of P3, and so but they do handle all of those types of projects: P3s, Design Builds, all of that. Yes, sir.
Because when you say the office is something that suggests a bunch of people.
Well, there's probably 3 or 4 people. I know it's Roger Rochelle and Virginia Mabry are the 2 people that we've dealt with over time in that particular sections of NCDOT.
Bill, first of all, thanks for all of your hard work and doing your best to keep us informed. We respect and appreciate you. I really want to go back and ask, I guess the question I've heard more than any other, which is it fair? I mean, people in North Mecklenburg have helped pay for very nice highways around Asheville and Durham and Raleigh and Fayetteville. And now we're being asked to pay for our own way here in North Mecklenburg. And number one, why? And number two, part of what bothers me is, I know people have asked, is this now a statewide program so that the next road in Fayetteville and Wilmington and New Bern and Raleigh will also be tolled, or do we just pick out North Mecklenburg, which gets us back again to, is it fair?
I'll try and answer that. There are 3 different tracks there. Let me go down the Y track. The Y track is that there was a study done in the region called the Fast Lane Study. I think it was in 2006 or 2005, 2006, 2007 when it was released, and it's available on the CRTPO website. It was done when it was MOPO. The conclusion of that was, and I'm summarizing, sure. The conclusion is that these roads, these interstates, to be able to provide reliable commute times, needed to have what they call high occupancy toll lanes, managed lanes. So that was the conclusion of that report. It was a federally funded report, and it was adopted by the MPO, MUMPO at the time. The projects that were put forward for I-77 before the state ever showed up were managed lane projects. So regardless of whether, and the state came in, and what they did was, is they brought along a procurement and a delivery methodology that was different, called the P3. So we can do a much bigger project and provide more capacity and congestion relief and reliable travel times for a bigger area if we bring in this P3. So that is the procurement and delivery plan. It was always going to be high occupancy toll lanes, Commissioner Fuller, and it was always going to be that because your metropolitan planning organization adopted that. So that's why there are going to be managed lanes on 77. That's why there are going to be managed lanes on 74. That's why there are going to be managed lanes on Southern 77. That's why there are going to be managed lanes on 485. Now, it's not fair, right? It's not fair part of it is that other MPOs may not have adopted high occupancy toll lanes as a means for managing congestion and providing reliable commute time. So the projects that they put forward for STI or for anything else may not have those components in them. So therefore, when their project gets built, it gets built without that. It gets built as they have proposed it. So the fairness is that you can submit whatever project that you want, and we'll consider whatever project that you want. But you know, we're not telling you that everybody's project has to have a managed lane in it if it's an interstate widening project. So, and I forgot the second part of that question, but essentially that's what it is. It was regardless of whether the state came forward and said, "Hey, I've got an idea about how you can build this and get it done faster and get it done more completely." It was always going to be managed lanes, period. There is no general purpose lane project proposed out there, and there never has been, with the exception of the link between 28 and 36. So,
could I also ask, isn't that same thing happening in Raleigh too?
In Raleigh, yes.
Isn't their MPO adopted that same policy because they already have the Tri-X Expressway?
They adopted that policy, and they've also begun what they call ramp metering. where you go, you have, you go onto one of these interstates and there's a stoplight, and you have to stop until the traffic thins out to the point where you can enter. And there's also, ramp metering is also being looked at by the CRTPO as well as a means to help manage congestion and improve mobility along these corridors. And it's not just I-77, it's 85, it's 74, it's 485, and it's all of those facilities.
So how many of those are on the list to be P3s or versus state-funded road?
I don't know that they have decided anything on 485 and 77 South, but on 74 is going to be a state-run facility. And the toll collection, no matter what type of facility it is, and the toll policies are the policies of the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. They collect the money and have the policies in place at the North Carolina Turnpike Authority. So so no matter whether it's a P3 or whether it's a state-owned facility, or a state-operated facility, those tolls go through that Turnpike Authority.
That doesn't mean they're reinvested in North Carolina highways. They could go to the vendor, correct?
I can't answer that question. So I don't know what the charter of the North Carolina Turnpike Authority says with regards to that.
Can I ask a follow-up to that? Bill, why was it determined that in that particular, the 74, they would do it state versus the way that ours is proposed? Do you know?
I can only surmise the fact that they build a mile every 10 years. So I can only surmise that it was because they've been, it's been a project, an ongoing project for quite some time, and they're not changing the real estate, they're changing the configuration, because it was going to be a bus only, and so they added a managed lane component and the bus lane component is what I think they did. So,
Can you speak a little bit to the bond package that was announced after, right around the signing and the financing process of this that the governor announced, which again seemed unfair? And you're in a difficult position defending the NCDOT, so all these questions are more directed at.
And and I'm glad you pointed that out, because it goes to the point person question that he asked. There was no point person originally because NCDOT lost their community services person. Senator Tart asked that the LNTC be the one that be the point of contact with regards to that. And until the contract signing and Warren Cooksey came on, we were the contact person, and it was more like trying to relay, acting as a relay in that process. So I appreciate that. So would you repeat the first part of the question?
The bond package. The bond package the governor announced in the middle of all the anxiety over the toll roads.
I provided to Mr. Bryce a copy of the package as it was described, and he may have distributed it to you all. I don't know. Okay.
If it was today, I have.
No, it was last week or 2 weeks ago or something. But anyway, and it had a map of the projects and had a list of the projects, and it's about $1.4 billion. And the projects supposedly are statewide tier projects, like 77, and they're projects that where the cutoff line for STI funding ended. They're the next projects in line on that, supposedly. I did some brief math, and I shared it with the mayor. About $500 million of that, $1.4 billion, is in Forsyth County on US 74. So the other projects are there's one project in our MPO, I think, and then which is a $168 million project. It's not an inexpensive project, and then the rest of it is spread around the state according to the STI score on the statewide tier. So that's the technicality. It has not received a warm welcome in the House of Representatives or the General Assembly at all at this point. So I don't know.
What's the process for that? Like, what would have to happen for the bond proposal that the governor's put forth to become a reality?
Well, that's a good question, and I'll give you a general outline, and I'll let Leland jump in where I go astray. But what would have to happen is that the legislature would have to authorize the bond issuance, and it would authorize it with a specific list of projects. Now, they can put any project they want to in there. They don't have to accept the governor's list. This is just assuming that it's moving forward, which is a big assumption at this point. So they could put, anything in there that they wanted to. But then, of course, it's just like anything else. It has to go to the LGC. And it has to be vetted through the LGC, which would probably, the treasurer's office would probably fast track it if they wanted to try and get it on the ballot for November, which the governor has requested. Okay. At the very least, the comments that I've seen from Raleigh, and you folks may have seen those as well, is that there's an inclination to wait until the following November when it's a presidential election to be able to have bonds on the ballot. So that's my current understanding is cash. And there's another $1.4 billion in there for building maintenance, building construction, cultural improvements in the region.
So is there transit in there? Any transit?
No.
All right.
And I think what this does is add confusion to an already confused situation. And it also puts politics back into the system where they claimed that politics were being removed from the system, i.e. a vote of the legislature and a vote of the public.
And I think that was Mr. Fuller's point, Mr. Mayor, is that when all of those other things happened, Mr. Fuller, there was the old equity formula was in place and not the SDI formula. And so there's been a movement to more data-driven decision-making, and which this region has benefited from, by the way. But we can't go back and correct the inequities of the original equity formula. And real quickly, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Mr. Mayor.
Good.
Let me do a follow-up if you don't mind. I think everybody agrees we have to have additional lanes. It'd be nice if we could get mass transit, but for the next decade or two, we're looking at a situation where it won't be long until it takes longer to get to the Panthers game than to watch it. And so my question is are there any proposals or any of the state leaders, since we don't really have any authority over highways anyway, but are any of the state leaders, the governor, Speaker of the House, President Pro Tem of the Senate, are there any proposals that would put GPS lanes on 77 as a next step instead of tolls?
I think that you would get two responses to that. The first one is that the MPO has said that they want to use managed lanes for providing reliable travel times, which means that if you want to go to the Panthers game, if you want to know that you're going to get there in 38 minutes, whatever the number is, then you're going to need to use that managed lane to be able to get there in 38 minutes. The second answer to that is that if you want to, with this existing contract that's been executed, if you want to add general purpose lanes to that facility, it will involve a lengthy negotiation with I-77 mobility partners, and financial penalties, I'm sure, would be involved, because that would enter into the realm of the unplanned revenue impacting event clause of the contract that's been executed. So
becomes a negotiation, basically.
Right, there, you have to enter into a negotiation and you have to come up with something that's satisfactory to be able to do that. So is it possible? Yes. Is it being considered? I doubt it. And so that's kind of where, that's my view, and I'm not, speaking for NCDOT. But that's a question that we could ask NCDOT.
Is there any sense, like again, back to the kind of repeated extensions of the contract? So my understanding is like the contract is signed in June, like you said, and Centra is required to come with financing, but doesn't the state have to approve the extensions, which they've done so far?
Right.
I mean, do you have any sense that if they don't meet the May 27th date, what the state's position will be? I understand there's a penalty if the state decides to walk away.
There's a penalty clause in there, and I would imagine, and I'm
But I
not,
guess, do you know if Centra or I-77 Mobility Partners doesn't make May 27th, can the state just say, look, we've extended you 3 times, that's it, sorry?
I don't really know the answer to that, but I do know that there is a penalty clause in there for that.
Okay.
Has anyone from NCDOT answered the question about the concerns with Centra and the bankruptcies and failed highways that they've had all over the country?
Yes.
And what is their response and answer? Does it
There.
make you feel good? Does it make us feel good?
And their response to that is that each project is a separate partnership and a separate entity, and each partnership has its own unique characteristics.
Yeah, I'd like to see one where Centra's been successful and hasn't been bankrupt so far in the United States. They may all be separate, but I don't think they've gotten anything in.
Yeah, and you may know more about this than I do, but the explanation that was given by Secretary Tata when we were at the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce meeting is that it's like a mutual fund. If your mutual fund owns 26 stocks and 3 of them are underperforming and 23 of them are 6 of them are doing okay and 20 of them are exceeding expectations, then the overall return is acceptable. That's what Secretary Taylor told us.
I was just glad you answered it.
So, I mean, that was his answer to that question at the Charlotte Chamber of Commerce.
I think the state has also said if they were to go bankrupt, the state is protected, they get the facility, it's more
Yes.
the investors' bonds, et cetera, that will lose money.
If it goes bankrupt, then the bond purchasers are the ones that suffer the penalty. It's not the state, it's not the citizens of North Carolina, and that's not the people driving on the facility. It would be a transparent change of ownership at that point because of any kind of bankruptcy.
So I can't speak for MOPO, but when they approved doing a P3, I think they would have expected the state to do its due diligence and process and had more than one bidder if it was actually an economically feasible proposal, which just makes you think that it's not. It seems like everything goes to Centra. The state gets really nothing out of this. It hasn't been a very even negotiation. And I just think that, now the bonds have been issued and they're junk rate, right? So there's just a lot of things from a due diligence perspective that make you not want to rely on this vendor. And has the state really done its due diligence, or are they just so bullheaded that they're pushing this through because they want to get it done?
And let me kind of respond to that. And I understand that your point of view, and I can see how they take it. All private activity bonds come into the kind of junk category of so there's no difference really about whether it's this project that is junk bonds or any other project. They're all in that kind of category based on that. I can't speak for the state on the due diligence that they've done. I can get you a response to that question, but I think probably what they would do is they would point you to the website and to the consultants that they've had involved in this process and consult that. However, if you want me to get you an answer to a specific question, I'll be glad to do that because nobody around here has been involved in any aspect of that part of the transaction.
Has DOT scheduled a meeting in this region to discuss this at all?
Statesville on Friday,
Statesville on Friday.
In the middle of the day.
3 to 5, I think it is.
Yeah. You're on that, right? I mean, I think we got this notice, but I honestly was a little confused about the location and the timing.
Actually, I have not gotten that
You
notice,
have
so
not?
I will.
I got the impression that was set up for the Iredell County Board of Commissioners, which is why, because the RSVP address was the Iredell County Board of Commissioners admin assistant or something like that. That was my impression, that it was set up for that. That's why it's in Statesville.
Well, I think it goes without saying that besides our request and our neighbors' requests for more information and a better level of communication, it seems important that we have an answer to questions like Stacy has asked, and that they answer those to us directly, so that we have some comfort level and citizens can develop some comfort level in the business transaction that the state has struck on this project. So,
You know, it's just so frustrating because I'm a guy who was on Mumpo when we talked about this in 2010. And the idea of managing lanes to prolong the life, to make them affordable in an era, an era where we have no resources, we don't have adequate resources to build these roads in an area that's growing in population overnight. You know, it seemed like a viable way to go about it. It's done in other places where it is successful. I'm not saying it's a simple project, but there are places where this works. It provides reliability. It provides longer life for the road. You know, there are good aspects of it, but this deal has been so botched. That's the part that's so frustrating. And we don't have any responsibility for that. It all rests with NCDOT, and it's just really, really frustrating to folks like me who have been in support of this. But, you know, it's just like one more thing. How much more can we tolerate? It's just so far from where we started. That's the part that's so frustrating for me.
What is I'm assuming that you may or may not have been involved in conversations with NCDOT in the last few weeks regarding the unrest and the negative publicity and press that has come out about this clause or not clause. What is their response to that? Are they just ignoring us? Are they ignoring the region and the region's representatives? What is their response and thoughts, like with the resolution Cornelius has put forward and now Huntersville and all the news?
I mean, they responded with
I think share Warren's response.
right, yeah, and there was they responded with a clarification along, and I think if you did not get all of that from NCDOT, there were a couple of pages of information that came from NCDOT in response to that.
Was there something besides Warren's response?
There were, I think, it was, the title is clarification about the proposed future general purpose.
You know, a year ago, we were talking about the close, June 26th deadline date. You know, many of us asked for them to come and explain to us what was going on. We begged them to come. Lots of people were asking legitimate questions, and we were completely ignored. It took till, what, September, October to get a meeting? I mean, that's just inexcusable. These are legitimate questions that people have. And here we are, right back at it again.
Given all of that, that's not a conversation, I would like us to consider a resolution of sorts to join in with the North Mecklenburg neighbors and the county commissioners in Charlotte to ask for I'm not sure what I want to ask for, but a delay, a more conversation, clarification, answers to questions, an audit, I think.
Complete explanation.
Okay.
Well, I think you need to ask for the delay in the financial close too, till the questions are answered. And, you know, Senator Tard Bradford met with the governor last night at NCDOT, and they have 3 questions on the table that they're trying to get answered to. I think we should include in that or support of that effort and trying to get the same things they're trying to get in.
My question to Bill is a very practical one. I mean, one of the proposals going around, which makes a lot of sense to me, is a 90-day, to have a time for thorough and thoughtful discussion, in part because it's been so difficult to get it. Is that a realistic option?
You're asking my opinion?
Yeah, I mean, is
Because
it going to be laughed off, or will somebody say, yeah, there are now people who continue to have serious concerns and we need to spend a little time?
My opinion is that NCDOT would be forced to weigh the financial cost of a 90-day delay against any potential gain from that activity. And I don't know what that financial cost is, and I don't know, what the potential gain is, but they're going to be put in a position of saying, we've got a signed contract that has these, provisions in it. And so we're going to need to look at this and make a cost-benefit decision about, how we think that we ought to proceed.
And Bill, this isn't directed at you, but they've let Centra postpone the financial close since December 31st with no benefit to the state.
So, and I don't know what the provision, that specific provision of that contract was, and that we'd have to talk to NCDOT about that. That was my opinion. So that's not
I hope that what we can put together has enough teeth in it to be effective to some degree, because the excuse to go down the road and be $1 million, $10 million, whatever, into a $600 million mistake is not an acceptable answer. So we need to put something in here so that they'll recognize that we have questions and concerns, and recognize that we have the rights to answers for our region.
Would you allow even me to concoct, maybe with Bill's help, a resolution that is meatier than the one that is before you in the draft, bring that back to you immediately or as quickly as possible?
Yeah. Do you have the notes from the special staff, the governor of the NCDOT?
I have seen those 3 questions. Could you send them to me? I'm not sure where I saw them, whether it was on an email or what. And I guess might have even been yesterday or today? Last night. If you could find those and either print them or send them to us, that'd be helpful. And then we'll join our neighbors in a request. And I think the other request is that we have a face-to-face meeting and that we get answers to questions directly from this group, from whomever is in charge, is designated as the point person.
Mr. Mayor, could you request a singular name from the P3 group, so it's never a group they can defer, but get an individual's name?
Well, Secretary Tate ultimately.
We'll figure that out. Thank you. I'm going to please let the staff and the board discuss this at this point.
I guess
there is a point of public comment at tonight's 6 p.m. meeting. I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say how quickly can we turn something like this?
I would ask if we're that far off with what we have before us or not.
Yeah, I think
if there's any time frame established, I would personally be more concerned about what questions do we want answers to.
right.
Which I don't necessarily see. I mean, there's a question here: how did this contract amendment happen without knowledge? But whether it's 90 days, 60 days, 120 days, I'm more interested in what kind of questions are we posing and NCDOT. And at this point in time, they ought to be able to provide answers to those questions much quicker than 90 days.
Sure.
I think it would be very helpful if we could get someone in a position of authority to come right here in this room and talk to our citizens and not spend another 4 or 5 months trying to set up a meeting where it was difficult to ask questions.
Why don't you call them?
I'll be glad to call them.
I'm taking some notes on this sample resolution that is before you to see if we can add those points to this resolution, which I think is in concert with our neighbors. I think we want to be in concert.
This is the Huntersville piece, it's not the Cornelius one. So I don't know if you've looked at the Cornelius.
Do you want to, do we just need to add those two?
Those are highlighted from the Cornelius.
The highlighted items were
But the delay, Cornelius asked for a delay, which is not in this one.
yeah.
Is it possible to cobble it together so we can vote on it later tonight? When else would we, how else would we do it? A special meeting?
We just have to, just things go by email and see what.
Well,
That's why I was hoping we were close and you do it tonight.
10 minutes, put more questions on the sheet, figure it out, put it on 6 o'clock. There you go. How about that?
I think the questions that I keep hearing, because this thing that's in front of us really just talks about the amendment to the contract and why it wasn't communicated to the TCC. That's just one question. Right, but now there are questions, you know, that Bradford and Charter are asking, a lot of people are asking, you know, with the governor's bond proposal, how does that impact the project? I mean, there's 2 or 3 other questions out there that I would like to see incorporated in some kind of resolution to try to get answers to.
And I sent this to
And a 90-day time frame to get an answer to these questions, to me, is too long.
And I think certainly since Senator Tartt and Representative Bradford have posed these questions, they should be included in our resolution, so we can include those. Did you get them? You sent them link.
Yeah, I thought it sent to the town board.
I wondered if we could identify any additional questions we might have, and if maybe Rick and Bill could put something together before the 6 o'clock meeting, we could identify what we wanted to be contained in here, and have that available at that time.
Whereas we just think it's unfair. Yeah, whereas we just don't think it's fair.
Yeah.
And whatever you like, good luck with that.
Well, I could pose that in a question form. I mean, going back to the earlier discussion. How is it fair that citizens from North Mecklenburg have contributed tax money to build roads around most of the major cities in North Carolina? And now we're being asked to carry a major burden essentially alone, except for those who happen to come down I-77. So, for one thing, why is it fair? Number 2, is this something that is going statewide?
Well, I think Bill is answering that question. Bill answered that question as an MPO, as a regional decision-making process. What, Rodney, you talk about specific questions. Rick is taking notes here. And our goal would be to, in the next 30 or 45 minutes or so, or by some point in our 6 p.m. meeting, which is going to go for a while since we're talking budget tonight, we can have this.
Okay, again, one question. I know this is a very hard question to answer because it's political and it involves both of the people. And, you know, would be, does the governor's bond proposal provide potentially another funding source for Whiting I-77? I know that's not an easy yes no, but I think that's a question that's out there.
You know, of course, that DOT can't answer that question because that is a political question at this point. But we can pose it. And
We can pose it.
Request that the governor and DOT respond to these things as he's being requested to respond now.
And simple enough, if this weren't an option, what would be the next option? North Carolina DOT's views. They seem to be going forward as this is the absolute only option that we have. But there's always another option, and to do nothing is not the answer either. But force them to think about and pose what number 2 is.
Well, I was going to say, we hear that it hasn't been ranked under STI, but let's go ahead and rank it.
Would you send those 3? Did you send those 3 questions?
Twice now.
Okay. So we'll find that.
I sent the name, and I sent to the town board email, so I guess it's not correct to me either.
No, he's on that. Mr. Klein, we've kind of put you on the hot seat here for a quick turnaround, but you know that's why you're paid the big bucks. I wonder if you think you've got enough information from these questions with Mr. Thunberg's help to perhaps refashion this draft resolution.
We'll collect heads together and see what we can come up with. Sure.
My office is available.
Okay, very good.
You good with that? All right.
I think we just need to take action now sooner rather than later.
And then we'll put this on the item, we'll adjust the agenda tonight as an item of new business. which will come over, I'm sorry?
It would be first.
No, right, there's a whole bunch of things to do first. But we'll figure out where to put it. I would call it a business, which is not terribly deep, but we'll decide that.